typically I think of two reasons for persistence. There's a particular target that you're after, and you're just not going to stop until you get what you're after. Like you need some sort of intelligence that you're trying to spy on someone, and that asset is too valuable to give up. And it doesn't matter what product is in the way, you'll just find another way into that network. That's, kind of one style of persistence. And for people interested in that, we had a great report on Operation Crimson Palace. We had two reports on that talking about a Southeast Asian nation that seems to be of very much value to the Chinese, and therefore, if they replace our firewall with somebody else's or our endpoint with somebody else's, it doesn't matter what's there. They're just going to keep coming for it. And then the other kind, it feels like in this case, is it's like almost like they invested so much time in learning our operating system to the point that they could reverse engineer our boot processes and try to compromise them in this Eufy situation that you're mentioning, that it's like, well, if they're on to us when we exploit tens of thousands of them, maybe we can slip under the radar with our deep level knowledge of this and use it for other intelligence extraction, right? Like if they're going to shut us down every time we hit thousands of boxes within hours or days, perhaps we need to go more stealth and be quiet. But why give up? Like presumably they've been, we know they've been on our boxes for years. They have intimate knowledge, just like our own team designing the software at this point. It's kind of hard to walk away from that. If you really know it well, you're probably going to try to extract from that investment no different than a vendor does. I mentioned earlier there were some indictments around this. I haven't spoken to you since that all became public. Kind of was interested genuinely personally, and what was your reaction to that? Because I think there's a lot of the cybersecurity community sort of like, well, the guy's not going to be able to go to Disneyland, but what's the reality? What's the real impact on someone? And obviously, we've been cooperating with law enforcement in this situation, right?
Well, I mean, if we could send him tickets to Disneyland, we would encourage him to go, but I don't think that that's likely to happen. But yeah, you're right. We were working with law enforcement all along the way as this was happening, and the pattern of victimization here it's spanned multiple countries. Where we managed to get some really significant foothold was when a number of the devices that were exploited were in the United States. In particular, we began working with the FBI field office in Indiana, and then the U.S. Attorney General in the Northern District of Indiana. So because of the fact that the attacker victimized boxes on U.S. soil, it gave us foothold to be able to begin to work with law enforcement agencies in the United States. Ultimately, that's what led to the grand jury indictment. That we've published some additional information as follow-up to the original Pacific Rim disclosures, but effectively, what we saw was the grand jury indictment of Guan Tianfang, who we had originally been referring to as G Big Mao in some of the articles that we had published. When you read some of the related publications from government on that, there's what's known as the U.S. Department of State Reward for Justice program, the RFJ program, and the RFJ program is now providing a reward of up to $10 million for information leading to the location of Guan Tianfang. So it's great to see the law enforcement apparatus here in the United States taking this so seriously. They realize what a threat it is that we're facing against national security across all segments. It doesn't discriminate, and this is the important part. It doesn't matter what vertical you're in. It doesn't matter what segment you're in. It doesn't matter if you're a large enterprise or a 5-person small to medium business. There are elements of this that are completely indiscriminate. So the spray and pray component, it's going to go after absolutely anyone who's running any kind of a vulnerable footprint device on the internet, no matter what vendor you might be running. And we've seen this happen to the best firewall vendors in the world. All of us have been victim to this sort of a thing. So there's kind of a universal kind of a targeting that goes on with this. It doesn't necessarily just mean that those industries that are within the critical infrastructure specifically need to worry about it. There's a victimization pattern here that we just see that means that anybody who's running any kind of a device that has a presence on the internet needs to be worrying about this sort of thing. And it's great to see the U.S. government reinforcing that and kind of sounding the alarm and then providing the kinds of incentives for people to help bring the threat actors to justice.
Do I qualify for the 10 million? Because I know where he's at. He's in Chengdu.
Uh, yeah, you're gonna have to get a little more specific than that, Chet. And chances are, no, you don't qualify.
Fair enough. Well, I mean, on that topic, we also identified Sichuan Silence, a company that appeared to be involved in some of the exploit development against our firewalls. They were also named in the sanctions, I believe, from OFAC in the United States. Not too many months previous to our disclosure, while we already knew this but hadn't gone public yet, this information came forward about iSoon, another company that looked like it was hackers for hire on behalf of a nation state, right? And I don't think this is uncommon. I mean, the U.S. government buys off-the-shelf things as well that our cyber spies probably use in the field that we don't make public. And it's not a new thing necessarily, but it does seem like it may be a bit more of a trend. And I was curious of what your thoughts were there. Like, is this trend because of maybe more expertise in the private sector being available to hire to rapidly expand capability? Or is it just representative of how large these cyber spying operations are becoming for nation states? Because back in June, I was at an FBI event in Boston and was there with the head of US Cyber Command. And in that interview on stage, he mentioned that, he commands, I think, 14,000 men and women in U.S. Cyber Command down in San Antonio, which sounds like a really big number until, you estimate that MSS in China has over 100,000 people in what their equivalent of Cyber Command is. And that's just the Ministry of State Security, right? We're not even talking about the PLA or other organizations they may have. And this private sector entrance in China is somewhat counterintuitive to me. I lived in China for a little while in 99 and 2000. And back then, having your own company wasn't really much of a thing. uh, is this a global thing? Is this a China thing? Do you think we're going to see a lot more of it?
So the way that I would answer that would be to begin by reminding everybody that all technologies are dual use, which means that they can be used for good purposes or they can be used for bad purposes, depending on the intentions of the actor. And when you think about the way within cybersecurity, we always talk about the criticality of public-private sector partnerships. We talk about it from the perspective of the necessity that we have in order to be better at defending. But attackers are going to use it the same way. So there is a dual use when it comes to the partnership between the public and the private sector that applies not just for the benefit of the defenders, but for the benefit of the attackers as well. I think this is just an example of that. I think it's been going on, as you pointed out, in many countries for a very, very long time. This is just the most recent example. I think it's a tool of the trade, and we should just expect to continue to see that kind of participation and collaboration happening.